So let the discussion begin. Art Zwelling, Ben Nicholson-Smith from Sportsnet.ca. They were at the game today, covered the Jays, do a tremendous job covering the Jays. Let's let that be the starting point for the time being. Jay Happ, he's a great professional. His numbers speak for themselves. He can help any team. If you're the Toronto Blue Jays, Art, I'll start with you. If you're the Jays, what are the immediate must-haves when you're talking to other clubs for that guy?
He's the best starting pitcher on the market. I can't think of a better one at this point. So I'm looking for a top 100 prospect. I'm probably looking for a package. And I'm looking to move him soon. I mean, every time he goes out there, you risk him having a blow-up outing, it becoming 2 bad outings in a row. You risk a comebacker to the mound, him breaking a bone. Like, you can't live your life in fear of things like this, but these are realities that could happen. After an outing like today, what a great platform outing for a trade to the West Coast.
Why do you bring him out for the ninth, man? Why do you do that?
I think it's almost a favor to have because he's someone who's done so many good things for this organization, and he wanted that complete game. You know, he was saying afterwards that meant something to him. You know, as the Jays, it's probably something that you don't care about whatsoever, but out of respect for him, I think it's a deference move to have.
A lot of times GMs, they don't like to trade, obviously, within the division, and fans don't tend to like this. But based on how the Jays season is going right now, if they do send him to, say, the Yankees, because it was John Paul Morosi who earlier this week said the Yankees and Mariners were 2 teams showing interest. Do you have a problem with that, or do you just send him to whatever team you're going to get the best back?
I don't have a problem with it. I think front offices sometimes do, and sometimes want a premium in return. I mean, we've seen it happen. I don't know if necessarily for a player of the caliber of Jay Happ, but if you're looking to deal in the American League this year, I mean, New York and Boston are going to be 2 teams that you're going to be talking to. We know the 5 playoff teams right now. There isn't a race.
It's incredible.
Unless the Angels are turning things around in a hurry, we don't have a race. So you're pretty limited in the American League clubs you can talk to right now.
I think you have to be willing to do it. And if you actually make a really good trade with the Yankees, then you can take away a great prospect from them. So it almost serves you in the long term. And after this year, Happ's a free agent anyway.
Kelvin Herrera was traded by Kansas City this week to Washington. A minuscule ERA this season, closing games for KC. He has playoff experience, a tremendous pickup. What I found interesting about that move as we get closer to July 31st was that none of the 3 prospects Washington sent back were top 10 Baseball America prospects. So the quantity seems good, but there's debate as to the quality of what Kansas City got here. Where are we with this trade market right now, guys? Because it seems like prospects are flowing. You can get 2 or 3 prospects for Jay Happ. We can all agree on that. But what quality? If one of the top relievers available doesn't get you a top 10 prospect, what can Jay Happ get?
There's been a lot of debate about those prospects. You know, maybe they just really liked them because they're not high on lists. There's been debate about Herrera's health and whether
which happens all the time, right? Like the Baseball America, it's a guideline, but teams have their own scouting departments and they make their own opinions. Obviously,
there's been a lot of debate about that. So when it comes to Jay Happ, I see it both ways. You know, you can trade him now and say, look, you're getting 3 months if you acquire him now, right? You're not just getting those 2 months, that August and September. You get July as well, and he's fresher right now, and you get to assimilate him quicker. Or do you wait until closer to the deadline when maybe there's more bidders, or maybe teams are in more of a desperate situation and willing to give up more?
Yeah, I think with Happ, you have a guy who has a ton of value. I still think that, like Arden said, he really is that best starting pitcher right there. With the relievers, though, like Clippard, Axford, they'll be in demand to some extent. I just don't think you're going to see them get really anything substantial back for those guys.
In terms of which players, specifically with pitchers, the Jays might be willing to move by the deadline, a lot of people, they think of Marcus Stroman, but they think, is he going to be healthy enough? Is he going to have enough time? Now that he's coming back, he's going to make the start Saturday in LA. Is he going to have time to kind of up his value? Do you see that happening, and do you see that being a possibility for the Jays?
I think it's a possibility. I still think it's a pretty remote possibility, though, when you look at, just how many things would have to happen. Like, he would have to pitch really well, and you would have to have a team that would pay as if he's a top starter. Because otherwise, if you're the Jays, just let him run out the rest of the year, and you can always trade him in the offseason if you want to go down that path. So to me, it seems pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, from people I've talked to, he looked great, in his recent appearances on the mound. We didn't see him in a game this past week because they got rained out, but he threw a sim game. He's throwing to Bo Bichette, Cavan Biggio. He's throwing to good hitters. So we'll see what he looks like this weekend. But I think you talk about it. I think you absolutely talk about it. Maybe you wait for clubs to come to you instead of going, hey, this guy's available. Instead of putting him in the front. We were talking earlier. Instead of putting him in the front of the shop, Maybe he's kind of in the back of the shop, and if you want to talk about him, he's there. I don't know if you advertise it.
Are there untouchables right now? I mean, Aaron Sanchez is an untouchable.
It's the closest thing.
What, are we, honest to God, are we at a point where 2015 is not that long ago, but we're now at a point where the shop is open?
It has to be, I think. When you look at, whether it's, Harris Solarte, I think you would have to listen on him if a team came calling. Sanchez, maybe on that borderline. Asuna, of course, all kinds of off-field stuff would impact, but otherwise, he would be a perfect guy to be trading at this deadline because we've seen some of those elite relievers can really bring back top prospects at the deadline.
Your untouchables are at AA. That's where your untouchables are.
So let me preface the question in terms of the current roster right now.
Yeah.
Guys who are running out there day in and day out, other than Sanchez, everyone can be had, right?
Is there anybody on that roster that you think fans would go, oh, I can't believe they traded him? Is there one guy?
This is
But
also
you
the
need,
same
you
fan
need
base,
guys to
like-
play, right? Like Ryan Tepera is a name that we've heard a little bit, but I mean, do you need him or do you just see what you can get for him?
I think if you've got a reliever with high value and you can get something for him, I mean, look at what happened to Joe Biagini, right? Like, look at what we've seen from some relievers.
Go remind me what happened to Joe Beach.
These guys can fall off a cliff. So if you've got a reliever with high value, you have to think about that because the variance in their performance is wild.
3 years of art still left on Tepera's contract, is that right?
Yeah, and I think they would listen. I don't think it's anything that they're going to prioritize. Just when you look at all the other guys that they probably should be trading, the Haps and the Estradas, I think Tepera is far down on that list. But if someone came to them and said we really want this player, they would definitely listen.
Alex Anthopoulos was in town this week. It's the best, arguably the best farm system in Major League Baseball right now. Do you see them being bedfellows? Because we brought it up with Alex yesterday. It's like, would it be weird? Or, is business business? Do you put the past aside? And typical Alex Anthopoulos, great answer, very diplomatic. Do you see it happening, though, on a semi-major to major level, that Mark Shapiro and Alex Anthopoulos, who had that infamous meeting where Mark looked at the whiteboard and said, here's what we don't have for the next 5 years, do you see them doing business together?
If there's any residual ill feelings, which there could be, I think it has to be put aside because,
Right.
like you said, these two teams could. And look, it's business, right? Like you're not in there to sing kumbaya, right? You're in there to get a deal done. And Josh Donaldson would fit awfully nice at third base with Atlanta. Jay Happ, was that not just a great advertisement with Alex Anthopoulos watching from the from the executive box? What better advertisement was that today? So you absolutely have to get past any of that.
Yeah, I think it's true, and they have talked trade before. They talked trade in the offseason. They talked trade again this spring. So those deals obviously didn't come to fruition, but it's happened before. Just they haven't got to that final stage.
Right now, a lot of discussion is obviously, as it has been right now, is who could you move and who do you want to move. But it's also about who should still come up before the season's done. And you see Jaime Garcia last night, 5 runs on 5 hits. His ERA is now 6.16. I mean, how much longer is the Jays' leash on him?
Well, we're seeing him search for answers, really. I mean, you look at his, the post-game scrum, he's kind of describing what he's going through, trying to find the feel for those pitches, and that's a tough thing to do at the major league level. Health-wise, he seems to be there. But, yeah, at a certain point, I think you start looking down at the minor leagues, and Sean Reed Foley and Ryan Baracki, those guys, I think, will get a look at some point this summer.
Jaime Garcia in his post-game scrum last night, we were both there. He's asked his first question. We clocked it. It took 22 seconds for him to come up with it. He was silent for 22 seconds. That's a guy who literally does not have answers. So I think he makes his next start. The Blue Jays are in on him for $10 million when you factor in the $2 million buyout for next year. So, and he has had good starts recently. He's had 2 poor ones in a row, but before that, he was kind of flip-flopping between good and poor starts. So you want to see if there's something there, but I think Ryan Baracki is a guy who the other night was fantastic from the left side. He's got a nice fastball, great changeup. I'd love to see him in the majors right now.
Of the 4 names you saw there, Ben, who do you think is closest to if Garcia, if the move is made for Garcia, thanks for that, guy. If the move is made and Garcia's not on this roster in another month to month and a half, who gets the call?
I think Baracki, and he had a really nice outing in his most recent start at AAA. He's shown a lot to the Blue Jays this year, and I think he would be that guy. One way or another, I think Baracki and Reed Foley, when you look at Happ and Estrada likely being traded, I think we'll see a lot of them this year.
You mentioned you guys down in the clubhouse and in the scrums. And I haven't heard this a lot from people this year, so let me ask you, what's it like down there right now? Because we haven't seen this team in this kind of spot where not only are they losing 2, winning 1 every 3 days, everyone's pretty much aware of what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, that this deadline's coming up and everyone have your bags packed. It's like a season-long bachelorette season, and you never know when you're going. So I hear about the Bachelorette, I've never seen it. The point is this, what's it like down there? What's the mood?
Honestly, to me, and I don't know where you land on this, Arden, but to me it seems just very day to day. Baseball is such a daily sport. They don't seem to dwell on the big picture. They don't really answer about the big picture. They say, hey, we got a game tomorrow, we got a flight to catch to LA, and that's it. That's where their focus seems to lie. And
No
that's
frustration, no like any of that?
There's
Any at
some
all?
frustration, like Garcia was definitely frustrated last night, no question there. But there's not a huge sense of frustration. I just think, I'm not sure that's so productive if you do that 162 times.
This is gonna sound funny, but I actually think it's better in the clubhouse now than it was. There was a point right on when they got swept by Oakland, when they went to Detroit and things weren't going well. It was grim, it was bleak, guys were pissed off and upset. I kind of feel like, in a funny way, the finality of this has sunk in. Like, guys understand it's not gonna happen.
So that moment was kind of the tipping, the acceptance point, is kind of what you're saying.
I don't know when they accepted it. To me, that Oakland sweep was when that was like, cleaning off the hands of this thing. So now, and I think that now guys are starting to get asked about being traded, and it's not, Jay Happ wasn't saying after the game today, well, I'm thinking about winning for this team next time.
Forthright today.
Right?
Yeah.
He was pretty much saying, agreeing with us, yeah, I'm gonna get traded.
It was very Marco Estrada last year when his name was floated around a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Ben Nicholson Smith, Arden Zwelling, thank you very much. We don't have time for our is Ichiro going to be in the home run derby conversation. We're going to get to it one day. I think it's ridiculous. Still to come. How busy will the trade market be ahead of Friday's NHL?